The world of Alterna in Splatoon 3 is a mysterious place with tons of secrets hidden everywhere, and today I kind of want to uncover some of these secrets and actually talk about the Alterna logs that we got throughout the single player adventure, and I want to kind of describe them and talk about them with you guys and also make theories and connect different plot points that may not have been obvious right away. So today I'm going to read through these Alterna logs and discuss what is just going on with this place and what happened, and some extremely interesting lore that might also now finally explain exactly how the Inklings and Octolings came to be and how they look the way they do right now. If you guys are excited for some awesome lore, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Splatoon, and just make sure you subscribe because we are trying to reach 200,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so every single person that subscribed is helping out a ton. Thank you so much to everyone that has been subscribing lately. You guys are awesome, but let's get into the video. Log 1, The Fall of Humanity, states, as technology advanced at an exponential pace, so too did prosperity, and ultimately conflict. Before long, the entire world was embroiled. In the end, nearly all life on Earth was wiped out. As humans squabbled, natural disasters intensified. Volcanic eruptions leveled cities, the sea rose and began to consume the planet. Humanity experienced a mass extinction event. Soon the surface of the Earth became a barren wasteland, completely inhospitable to life. Error, against the odds computed to be 42,791 to 1, some humans survived. Therefore, the planet was only nearly completely inhospitable to life. These survivors found shelter in a vast cavern created by the cataclysmic volcanic eruption. The cavern provided shelter, and a massive pool of accumulated seawater provided life. For a while, humanity was being decimated. Marine life flourished. All manner of squid, octopus, and jellyfish had propagated in the deep. The surviving humans had found a source of sustenance. Now, this is very interesting because the rising tide wasn't the only thing that took out human life, is what we were led to believe in the past two games. In fact, it was an accumulation of tons of other things. There's probably wars and conflict going on amongst the people. As technology flourished, so did the problems with these people. And not only did water kill off the humans, but crazy natural disasters along the lines of volcanic eruptions were wiping out civilizations, which the world was just going through a terrible time. Now, said that the odds of human survival was 42,791 to 1, but it doesn't tell us the exact amount of humans that actually survived, just the odds of them surviving. And they did. A couple of them, or at least a good group of humans, survived, and they'd set refuge within the crater of that volcano that killed everybody. Pretty ironic, huh? And remember, these disasters were wiping out not just humans, but probably wildlife as well, because it does mention the fact that not only humans set refuge in this crater, but also marine life, because there was seawater at the bottom of this crater in the volcano. The first world of the story mode is actually called The Crater, and it's just a giant crater in the wastelands. And we really didn't know what this giant hole was in the first place. Now we know it was actually home of a volcano that erupted and destroyed lots of the civilization, and it's been sealed up as a home for remaining humans and marine life, and that's why there's a giant seal over it when you fight DJ Octavio. This kind of worked as an underground bunker to protect human life as they hid from the catastrophes above. But what's also very interesting is at the end of the game, the rocket actually takes off and flies through Alterna's shields, getting out of the area, which probably means it exits through this hole. Within this crater, we have the world of Alterna, the last refuge of the humans. Log 2, The Rise of Civilization, again states the surviving humans appointed scientists to lead their new society. Believing that science would provide a wiser path forward, fully empowered, these scientists took on the monumental task of establishing a sustainable ecosystem within the cavern. They dubbed this new society Alterna and began the process of recreating the Earth they had once known. Of course, not even scientists are immune to nostalgia. The humans began constructing large-scale 3D printing operations. This allowed them to recreate some of humanity's favorite artifacts within the confines of Alterna. Additionally, they created a robust information management system designed to indelibly record all of humanity's precious knowledge. Such a system would naturally require some sort of record keeper, a computer that could autonomously observe and record data. the scientists achieved their aim with the development of Orca, also known as the omniscient recording computer of Alterna. The scientists and the people of Alterna also had nostalgia for the things that they have lost within their world, so they used 3D printers in order to print some of the things. That's why we see Moai statue heads everywhere, and that's why everybody keeps filling them in their lockers for some reason. But the people of Alterna also needed a way to record their progress and keep notes of everything within the human civilization and pretty much just be a record bank, and that was Orca. Orca's job was just pretty much keep watch on everything when they were gone, and also to record human history. But it's not quite sure why they're setting up missions for the Inklings to kind of complete. Why would they set up obstacle courses for them? Maybe the humans did this to see if anybody else could complete them when they were gone in order to test whatever creature was still remaining on, the surface of Earth? I don't know, or maybe the system itself created these obstacles because it didn't have anything else to do since humans have left so long ago. I actually don't have footage of it here, but there's little cameras spread out across Alterna that actually follow the Inklings' movements, so yes, everything that you're doing is being recorded and documented for the Orca computer system to put in its database, which is a pretty interesting fact. The third log, A New Sky, states, as life in Alterna moved forward, one scientist discovered a new way to make liquid crystals from the bodily fluids of squids. These new crystals could change color in response to faint and fleeting electrical signals emitted by living organisms. To put that in more human terms, these crystals could read minds and then output imagery that matched the viewer's innermost thoughts. Humans were enchanted with this new invention and began mass producing the crystals. Eventually, they lined the walls and roof of Alterna. As the crystals absorbed the collective desires of those in Alterna, they assumed the appearance of the sky as it was seen on the surface long ago. At last, after 25 years of being confined beneath the earth, humanity could once again look up and see the sky. That weird colored liquid that we see all over Alterna was actually the crystalline liquid that came from the squids that humans used in order to give themselves the fake reality of actually having a sky, clouds, and sun. It kind of played off of the emotions of humans and projected something that actually wasn't there, which gives us the dome of Alterna. Yes, the scientists made a dome to protect civilization within this cavern, but originally it had no sunlight or no sky. That liquid goop was spread all over the walls and ceiling in order to give the fake realization that there is a sky and sun. It's kind of crazy. Then we move to log number 4, humanity's final day. It states, the years passed with prosperity. The population of Alterna grew like a rising tide. The scientists, now the elders of their kind, believed that they had done all they could to advance the civilization of Alterna. They began selecting new leaders to succeed them, entrusting to them the world they helped build. Humanity's new leaders inherited both the brilliance of their predecessors and their unquenchable thirst for innovation. This new generation, born and raised in deep Alterna, would prove to be every bit the match of those they were to succeed. However, they soon grew restless at the sight of the liquid crystal sky, believing they deserved to behold the reality that existed outside the cavern. The elders who knew what awaited outside the safe haven of Alterna issued stern warnings to the brash young scientists. Nevertheless, the young scientists pressed on with their plan, the construction of a massive rocket ship to escape Alterna. Sadly, as the boosters were ignited for the first time during a launch test, tragedy struck. The energy from the rocket boosters overloaded the cavern's liquid crystals. A violent and terrible chain reaction ensued. Without warning, the stone walls of the cavern began to shatter, raining debris down upon humanity. Alterna, the last civilization of once prosperous humanity, was no more, and those few who escaped the carnage would soon follow it into death. The younger generation of scientists that took over after their predecessors just wanted to see the actual sun. They were tired of this fake reality that they were living within this cavern, and they wanted to escape. But after being warned multiple times, the outside world was just uninhabitable right now. There was no way for them to go out there without taking serious damage. The world was still in chaos and they needed to stay in, but they didn't listen. As soon as the rocket took off, the boosters from the rocket ignited all of the different crystals lined along the walls and the ceilings of the cavern, causing a massive chain reaction. I could only imagine how crazy it was. But what's interesting is today, all the walls and ceilings are still projecting the sun in the sky, so there still must be crystals up there. In fact, if you look up though, you can see where some of the crystals peeled off of the wall and is kind of glitching with the system. No, this is not the hole that the rocket escapes out of, because that is a clean opening hatch door that clearly was designed to be exited out of. You can see it a little bit right here. It's interesting that this is the only wall that's messed up after that chain reaction of crystals exploding, but I have more information on what could happen, and we're going to actually skip a log all the way to the EXE log at the very end. Alterna wasn't the only refuge for civilization at the time. The Return of the Mammalians log states, recall for a moment the first apocalypse that devastated the human race. Those who escaped into the caverns of Alterna were not the sole survivors. There were others who escaped via a giant rocket ship, the Polaris. Launched in the nick of time, this ship was laden with many of Earth's species that had been placed into a cold sleep. The mission was simplified: find another planet to replace the Earth. Considering the circumstances of its launch, the Polaris had a smooth voyage until it reached the edge of the solar system. It was at that point that debris struck the vessel, damaging its navigation system. The crew was able to turn the ship around and head back toward Earth, but the effort was in vain. There was not enough fuel to attempt a landing. The Polaris drifted aimlessly for 10,000 years. The people of Alterna weren't the only ones trying to escape with their rocket. In fact, there was other scientists a part of the world trying to escape the disasters before they even struck, years before these people even made it to Alterna. That rocket, the Polaris, tried to find another planet, and with them they had hibernated species they kept with them for some type of scientific purposes and maybe for repopulating another planet. Of course, their navigational system got destroyed and they were not able to make it back because of fuel problems, so that ship just floated in space for years. In fact, 10,000 to be exact. Obviously, everybody on that spaceship died. Well, not technically everybody. So I'll come back to this log at the end of the video. But hey, if you guys are enjoying these logs and this Splatoon lore, let me know in the comments down below by liking the video and also subscribing in order to stay up to date on even more Splatoon lore I have coming your way. But now we move past the extinction of humans to log number 5, Fresh Intelligence Awakens. As the inner walls of Alterna collapsed, thousands of tons of rock and liquid crystals plunged into the waters below. As these crystals washed to and fro among the flotsam and jetsam of humanity's former colony, they broke into microscopic fragments. Because they had repeatedly absorbed and reflected humanity's wishes over so many years, the crystals retained those feelings. Little by little, the squids, octopuses, and assorted sea creatures that thrived in the waters of Alterna absorbed these crystals into their bodies. This process continued until one day the marine organisms began to feel something fresh. I see what you did there, Nintendo. These fresh impulses bore a striking resemblance to humanity's passive desire to return to the Earth's surface. Spurred by these impulses and whatever else may have been floating in the polluted waters, the sea creature began to evolve rapidly. Each species developed pulmonary respiration, mobility, and other traits consistent with the land-dwelling creatures. They began to adapt. Their intelligence grew at a remarkable pace across generations. Some species even gained extraordinary camouflage capabilities. A point of no return arrived. The sea creature of Alterna set foot on dry land and never looked back. Like humans, they strove for the surface. Of course, survival on land was harsh, but the creatures were persistent. Soon they found the tunnels that humans had used to escape the apocalypse. With their path forward now clear, these fresh, fledgling beings left the ruins of Alterna behind and set their sights on the surface world. We've actually seen lots of charts from past Splatoon games of how Inklings evolved, but it never really told us how, and thanks to these crystals, they were able to evolve into the forms that we see today, but it wasn't a continuous process. There was actually a cutoff, and I'll get to that within the next log. But what's very interesting about this whole thing is it's really just a giant cycle of how this all began in the first place. First, there were squid and octopi, and humans pulled out some type of special crystals from them in order to use their special essence in order to program a fake sun and sky for their home of Alterna. They pretty much just acted as wish crystals and gave visual representation as to what the humans wanted and wished for. These crystals eventually broke down because of the explosion, and multiple sea creatures began to digest these crystals over the years, not just octopi and squids, eventually allowing them to mutate over the years into the modern day Inkling and Octoling, and eventually the other creatures that we see walking around and talking around all over the world. Now it's marine life's time to take over the world. Now we move on to log number 6, the land of fresh beginnings. The beings that had emerged from the waters soon emerged from the caverns of Alterna itself. From there, they flourished quickly. It wasn't long before before they had explored every corner of the world. This epochal event gave great significance to the crater above Alterna and its surrounding territories, now referred to as the Splatlands. The region would, from that point on, be known as the Land of Fresh Beginnings among the creatures that now thrive on the surface. These newly evolved beings, having scattered themselves across the globe, soon gave rise to distinct cultures and unique ways of life. Out of all the species now roaming the earth, squids and octopuses soon distinguished themselves via intelligence and fresh vibes, so to speak. It wasn't long before they became the apex species of the planet. Now, I must fast forward a bit. 5,000 years later, a peculiar individual was born. This squid quickly rose to fame in the Splatlands due to some unique characteristics. Yes, this individual was embraced as a prophet, gifted with numerous revelations that they shared among their fellow squids. It was another turning point for squid kind. During this period, the foundations of modern cephalopod civilization were laid. That individual squid is now widely known and celebrated as the progenitor of the modern day inkling. Okay, that's a lot to unpack there. Now, the Splatlands isn't just an ordinary place in another town for just Splatoon 3. We now know it is the single most important location within Splatoon history. This city is so important to the Inklings and the Octolings alike because it's literally where they come from. In that crater lied the home of Alterna, and not just any ordinary place. Alterna, as we already know thanks to all these logs, was a place that kept humankind and marine life safe, which eventually led to the now evolved squids and octopuses leaving this home of Alterna and spreading across the world. This whole should be way more important, and maybe the Inklings and Octolings just don't really know the story of where they come from, but this should be like a sacred ground that's kind of taped off and roped off and kind of celebrated at. This is literally where it all began. Something else is very interesting is looking back at this chart from Splatoon 1 and seeing how the Inklings actually evolve. We see them go in this straight line, and really it wasn't quite like that. Inklings kind of were just walking squids, and also Octarians were just walking octopuses. It wasn't until this guy was born, whether it be from some type of mutation or maybe those crystals actually played on the fact that he wanted to be a human, because once again they play on wishes, and maybe it kind of over the years eventually transformed one of them into more of a humanoid form. I mean, look at this guy, he's kind of creepy looking. But he is the reason why we have more human looking Inklings and Octolings, which is very interesting. I want to go even further with this and talk about the Octarians and then even the Octolings themselves and even more of the creatures, but now's not the time because this video would be 100 minutes long, I'm not even kidding. So let's move on. I talked about this a ton in my last video, talking about the end of the game and of course Mr. Griz being the main villain, and I discussed a lot of stuff with him. If you want to go check that out, I will briefly give you his story real quick because it's at the very end of the log. So after that 10,000 years of the Arc Polaris drifting in space, this is what came next. Eons passed, the once stable orbit of the Polaris decayed over time until the ship found itself in an inescapable pull of the Earth's gravity. Re-entry was not kind to its inhabitants, all perished, save one, Bear number 3, an experimental subject who had retained consciousness within the cold hibernation, survived. For 12,000 years he had dreamed and plotted. Fully awakened, Bear number 3 came to a terrible realization: he had not landed on a new planet at all. He was back on Earth, and yet it was not an Earth he knew. This Earth, it seemed, was dominated by sea creatures, not a single mammal to be found. In the course of his search for even a single fellow mammal, Bear number 3 used a navigational equipment from the wreckage of the Arc Polaris to discover Alterna. It was a wasteland, of course, but a few of the liquid crystals that had once covered the walls and ceilings remained. With knowledge built during his thousands of years of dreaming, he repaired some of Alterna's facilities and began researching the crystals. I mean, honestly, I kind of feel bad for Mr. Griz. He was just a bare test experiment that was taken into space as one of the last survivors of Earth, and then chaos struck and he was left to float in space in hibernation for 10,000 years and eventually drifted all the way back to Earth just to find that there's no mammals left at all. There's no humans, there's no bears, nothing left for him to associate with but marine life. That's kind of upsetting, and I couldn't imagine being in his shoes, or really his claws. He was just doing whatever it took to bring back mammals, and it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, even though it was going going to come at a price of wiping out all marine life in order to do so. Let me ask you a question. Don't you think humans would do the exact same thing if they could? Yep, we probably would. So we can't really fault Mr. Griz entirely, and maybe he's not even that bad of a bad guy. That's a video once again for another time. There's so much stuff to talk about in this game. It goes on to state that this research bore fruit when bear number 3 compounded some of the liquid crystals with his own fur. This experiment created an entirely new substance with one terrifying property. It would transform any living creature into a mammal. Bear number 3 realized the implications immediately. He could restore the planet to a mammalian paradise. He began stockpiling fuzzy ooze, as he called it, with an Alterna's still intact rocket. That's why we see all these weird colored goop with fur all over it, all over Alterna. For such a venture, he would require the acquisition of thousands of golden eggs. These were used in the creation of the fuzzy ooze, although the exact details were never been recorded in memory banks. But bear number 3 had a plan. He founded a corporation that would go on and employ locals to collect his golden eggs under the name Grizco Industries. Mr. Griz, as he was now known, would pay handsomely for them. With fuzzy ooze production peaking thanks to the assistance of unexpected inklings and octolings, Mr. Griz took the final steps to set his plan in motion. The rocket was loaded. It would not be long now. Yep, this entire time from Splatoon 2 and 3 in both Salmon Run modes, we've been helping Mr. Griz the entire time, collecting these power eggs and golden eggs in order for him to make his ooze and power up his rocket. Yep, we've just been working to kind of kill ourselves this entire time. Pretty ironic, huh? Yeah, overall, we were probably just killing innocent salmonid in order to take their babies, in order to make a mysterious fuzzy goop that turns even inklings and octolings alike into mammals, or really anything into mammals. Yep, we were helping the bad guy. Obviously, in the end, it's the marine life that won victorious, and it's actually kind of funny because it was the help of Salmonid. Yep, little buddy, or huge buddy, in space was able to take out Mr. Griz with the help of us as well, and yeah, he's no longer. Well, technically, he's still alive thanks to you guys told me that he was floating around the planet in the post-credits, which probably means he could be plotting a revenge attack. So yeah, the great history of Alterna and the Splatlands goes a lot deeper than what initially saw on surface, and I was so excited to see this lore get even crazier with the 3rd installment, and I can't wait to see what else is coming with the future DLC expansion pack, and of course, the next game in the series being Splatoon 4 eventually. But I have so much more that I need to ask about and questions that need to be answered about the story still, and we are going to be covering them for the next couple of weeks, just talking about Splatoon lore and theories. And if you want to see that, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to stay up to date on all things Splatoon when I post. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. If you have anything you'd like to share in the comments down below, make sure you do so, and I'll be sure to check them out, and I will see you all on the next one. See ya, guys.